Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today, the Battleship New Jersey Curatorial and Education Department has been invited to Battleship Cove to see their ships. And while we're here, we're filming some YouTube content for you guys. This video will be a brief overview of the collection that Battleship Cove has. It is the largest collection of military vessels that any museum operates. By far the largest ship at Battleship Cove is Battleship Massachusetts herself. Battleship Cove isn't actually a cove, it is a river. However, having the battleship docked where she is creates a cove that is safe for the smaller vessels in the fleet. Battleship Massachusetts is a South Dakota class battleship completed in 1942 that served through World War II and was decommissioned in 1947. She sat in the mothball fleet into the 1960s. While she was there, she was stripped for parts for other ships and even started to be scrapped. The state of Massachusetts stepped in to try and preserve the ship at the beginning of the museum ship preservation era, and using money largely raised from school children's donations, they were able to buy the ship from the Navy and place her here in the cove. She saw action in North Africa, where she fired the first 16-inch shells of the war on the French battleship Jean Bart. She then moved to the Central Pacific with the Big Blue Fleet through the island hopping campaigns of the Central Pacific and then the meat grinders of Iwo Jima, Okinawa. And then she participated in the bombardment of Japan, which was the final time that 16-inch shells were fired in World War II by the Battleship Massachusetts. And she was preparing for the invasion of Japan when the war ended. She's a very lucky ship and took no casualties during her entire career. If you're a longtime fan of Battleship Cove, you've probably spent the night on board at some point, and their overnight program isn't currently happening, but it will be restarted when the pandemic is over. One of the interesting features of South Dakota class battleships is the cutout between the top of third deck and the top of the main deck along the midships portion of the ship. Iowa class battleships were originally designed to have an identical cutout throughout most of the length of their ships, but during construction it ended up being plated over with 1.5-inch thick shell plating, just like the rest of the hull. This means that to access the various fuel tanks and void systems that make up the torpedo defense system of the battleship on New Jersey, you can climb onto an office desk on second deck and go through a scuttle to get down to that. For Massachusetts, you have to get onto that angled platform there, probably using a paint float or a crane or something to access those tanks. Is it important to access the tanks when the ship is underway? No way! But that's one interesting addition that the Iowa class had over the South Dakota class. The next ship in the Battleship Cove fleet is the East German Navy corvette Hiddensee. She was built in Leningrad in the Soviet Union as one of a number of missile corvettes that were being exported around the world to some of their Eastern Bloc countries and their allies. This one served in the East German Navy from 1986 up until reunification in 1991. When the East and West German navies unified, she became a German warship for a brief period of time before the United States acquired the ship, and with a combined American-German crew, sailed her to the United States. The US did over 50 missions on this ship, testing her capabilities, since it is so common to other Eastern Bloc warships. Eventually, she was decommissioned and acquired by Battleship Cove. There isn't anywhere else in this country where you can visit a missile corvette like this. The next ship in the fleet is the submarine Lionfish. She's a World War II era diesel-electric fleet boat of the Vallejo class. Unlike many of the over a dozen diesel-electric boats preserved in this country, she is still in a World War II configuration. This ship took 2 years to construct, which was kind of long for a diesel-electric boat in wartime, and only had 2.5 war patrols. After the war, she was never got any of the guppy conversions that many of the fleet-type submarines got, and was rapidly decommissioned, even though she was pretty new and didn't have much mileage. She was used as a training ship for a period of time, even though she was not in commission. And then as nuclear submarines replaced all the diesel-electric boats in the U.S. Navy, she was completely decommissioned and acquired by Battleship Cove. Beyond her is the destroyer Joseph P. Kennedy. She's a World War II-era Gearing-class destroyer, named for the big brother of President John F. Kennedy, who was a pilot who was killed in action. This ship served right at the end of World War II, when the first Gearing-class destroyers were coming online, and then throughout much of the Cold War. She was extremely active during the Cold War and portrays herself and a sister ship in the movie 13 Days. She's in her Cold War era framed configuration. She isn't in her as-built World War II configuration. And so the Battleship Cove fleet features an interesting combination of World War II era assets and Cold War era assets. The various ships at Battleship Cove are memorials. Battleship Massachusetts is the state memorial to World War II, and is the state memorial to people from Massachusetts who served in that war. The Joseph P. Kennedy is the Tin Can Sailors Association memorial, a memorial to all American destroyer sailors. Just beyond the bow of the Joseph P. Kennedy, you can see the bow of the heavy cruiser USS Fall River. She was a Baltimore-class heavy cruiser, the most ubiquitous class of American heavy cruisers during the war. And she was one of the later members of the class brought online just after the war ended. She had very brief service. She was actually the flagship during the Bikini Atoll atomic bomb tests, and was pretty rapidly decommissioned after the war. Not because she was radioactive at that point, but because we had so many Baltimore-class cruisers, and because most of the gunships were being decommissioned at that point. While the entire ship couldn't be saved, the bow section was saved. Also on display at Battleship Cove are a pair of PT boats. One is an 80-foot-long Elko type boat. The other is a 78-foot-long Higgins boat. The Higgins boat was manufactured in New Orleans by the same company that makes many of the landing craft. The Elko boat is the only Elko boat left, and that is the same type that was made famous by President John F. Kennedy when he served on board the Elko PT boat 109. Those two vessels are enclosed in a building here. Also on the grounds are an LCVP landing craft, a Cobra gunship, a highly decorated Huey utility helicopter from the Vietnam War, and some other munitions, including Styx missiles and other macro artifacts that are on display to the public. If you're interested in supporting Battleship Cove, we left links in the comments section down below to their YouTube page, their website, and their Facebook page. If you live close by, you should come out and volunteer. They have an extremely active and young volunteer force that maintains their fleet of vessels. If you can't visit in person but would like to support them, they are raising money for a number of interesting restoration projects. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, but also from viewers like you. Your donations to the museum have allowed us to make trips like this to visit other cool naval museums and bring you back footage about them. This is the first of many videos about Battleship Cove that we're going to be releasing. There are a number of interesting topics here that they're able to cover with their fleet of ships that we cannot with our one ship. Remember to like, share, and subscribe so that you're notified as we put out those videos. And thanks for watching.